Making the time 6 o'clock right here on HGG Radio, reaching you at the highest mountain and the lowest valley. At this time, you're now invited to listen to the program Expressions from the Heart with your host, SHARON LAUMEN. Listen and be blessed.
This is SHARON LAUMEN on HGG Radio with Expressions from the Heart. This Saturday, the conversation will continue. Tune in to find out which one of our guests crying might be construed as a form of manipulation, and find out which guest or which person tried it but it failed. Tune in this Saturday at 6 o'clock to hear those results. We can't wait. See you soon. This is SHARON LAUMEN on HGG Radio with Expressions from the Heart. See you soon.
Don't let a wounded soldier wounded.
Good evening. This is SHARON LAUMEN on HGG Radio with Expressions from the Heart. Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight is part 2 of Are Men More Emotional Than Women? Are men equal in emotion, or are they less emotional than women? Some have said they're equal or probably even more, but they're better at hiding their emotions. Stay with us and find out what is being said. What factors contribute to whatever our beliefs are? Don't go away. We'll be right back.
How do you know that?
So, if I may say,
Go ahead.
I'm a crier. Crying is how I express my emotion, and that is how I release tension. That is how I release stress. So if I have a particular situation, I can have a good cry, and I feel better. Right? There are times when I go to pray, and the only thing I can do, dependent on whatever is happening in my life at that point in time, is just cry. There are no words. There's no voice. There's nothing can come out. The only thing that I can offer to God are my tears. And there are times when, even if I get angry and I can't react, I will cry. If I'm upset and I can't say how I really feel or do what I really want to do, I will cry. Because that's the only way that I feel I can get it out.
But
right?
hold on. When you are demonstrating how you're feeling because you can't articulate words and you're crying, could that be interpreted based on your display as manipulation? Nobody actually understands or knows you well enough to say, well, you know, she's not trying to manipulate the situation. That's just who she is. How do you deal with that? Or have you ever encountered that?
And I'll always be crying over you, crying over you. Yes, now you're gone.
Well, I'm not sure if I have. I'm not a person who really go around caring so much about what other people think. And that's why even in church, I will tell people, when you come here, I don't come here to see you. I don't come here to watch you. I come to worship. And sometimes in my worship, all I can do is cry, whether I'm happy. And you can't use my tears to judge what I'm crying about. You can't stay to one side of the room and think, oh, she's crying because she's stressed out. Sometimes I'm crying because I'm happy. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm crying because what God said he would do, he did do it. And the only way I can get it out is to cry. And I'm like, I'm thankful, right? So you cannot, people just can't use my tears to judge what exactly is going on within me, because that is how I express myself. So you definitely have to ask me, if you will, why are you crying?
So again, I
You
think the
don't
context
know.
is important though, because, you know, it's a broad question and it depends on the context, and what you're saying makes sense for what you're speaking about. So it depends. Are you in church and you're crying? Are you in a relationship and you're crying? Are you in an argument and you're crying?
So context.
Did your boss just say something to you and you're crying? So it depends on the context.
Context. So, I mean, if you don't know a person, you can judge based on what you think you see, right? But in a general frame of thinking, do women, have any of us used tears to manipulate? Have you ever done that? I think I have. I'm admitting it. I've done it. I don't do it, but I've done it. Because it might have been an effective tool for the reason that I did it, whenever that was. Are we willing to say women do that sometimes?
Men do that as
Maybe
well.
women.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Men do that as well.
I'm pretty sure that they do, but I can't speak for them because the man that was here has disappeared.
He'll be back shortly.
It's okay.
But for me, I don't use my tears as manipulation. I can't recall doing so. As I said, I am a crier, and those who know me knows that I will cry. The other day, my mom was talking to someone back in Jamaica, and her comment to them was, if my daughter was here, she would just cry.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So all right, take for example, if I get really upset, if I get angry and I can't hit you, you're not supposed to hit.
She starts crying because I want to hit you.
I'm crying
goodness.
because I can't do what I want to do, and then the next best thing for me to do.
Cry.
So basically, you're just,
Cry.
you know what you remind me of, Ree? You remind me of something I had written on a paper before when your husband was speaking. There are professional mourners. You could make money from that.
Yes. Well, they're in the Bible.
I know. That's why I said it.
When they in the Bible days, they used to have professional mourners at funerals.
Yes,
And
but
there
my tears are not turned on because of somebody else.
It's not professional.
It is my feeling, is how I'm feeling. I can't just get up and start crying because there's, when I cry, I'm not acting. It's because I'm genuinely feeling something on the inside.
But then it brings me to that question that I asked earlier before we all started having the conversation. When I was giving the definitions, feelings, we are often told, don't trust your feelings. I'm not talking about you now, Sister Ree, in regards to what you're explaining to us, but it just kind of brings to my memory this thing. Is it a myth? Is it a cliche? What is this? Don't trust your feelings because it's probably lying to you. You're saying that this is what I'm feeling, so I'm crying. It's subjectivity again, and it's context, right, Yolanda?
That is right. It's context.
It's all about context. But do we trust our feelings? Should we trust our feelings?
Well, your feelings are how you're feeling. That's how you feel.
Why do people say she wears her, what is it? How does that go? She wears her
heart on the sleeve.
Yeah. What does that mean?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
What is that saying, Yolanda?
When someone's wearing their heart on their sleeve.
Oh.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
It means that how I feel, you will know.
Yeah.
And that's me. Like, I think that's me.
Because you show your feelings.
I show how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And you will know how I'm feeling.
Mhm.
right? I will tell you too how I'm feeling. And sometimes, and I can speak even for in my relationship, I think there were times when my husband wasn't hearing me or he wasn't listening to me. And he was hell bent on what he's trying to explain to me or what he's trying for me to get, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But I'm trying to say something, but it's like you're not hearing at all. And the only thing I can do is resort to crying because I don't know what else. There's nothing else I can do.
So that's a tool for you.
It's a tool for me, not for me to use to manipulate someone, but it's my coping mechanism.
But when
it's
you
how I
cry, it's not necessarily defined as manipulation, but it's an effective way to get his attention, which is what the question is asking.
No.
I'm sorry, that's what it says. Do you use tears to manipulate a particular response?
Crying. You probably look over there and be like, yeah, there she goes again.
You know,
That does make sense, though, because I see
I don't know where
tears.
he went.
Yeah, that makes sense because tears need to be interpreted in the context, as we're saying, right? In order to understand, why are you crying? Why are there tears? Like, what is this about? And then once we get that and we make that interpretation and hopefully we're correct, then we're going to act on it. So that's what I see here.
But can the tears be misunderstood?
Yeah. It can be.
Can be, yeah.
Because you're saying that tears must be understood. What do these? They don't come out in colors. They come out the same way they come out for everybody. What does it mean? They're not words.
But
Only
it's
God
understood,
understands.
related to the person, to the individual. So, with Sister Ree, I mean, hopefully her husband understands her tears and then he will react accordingly. When I cry, my husband understands me and he will react accordingly.
Yeah. And as Sister Yolanda says, it's contextual.
Very much so.
For example, as she said in the workplace, like I'm not gonna cry in front of my boss. If he says something to me, I don't think I'm gonna cry in front of him, but I'll go to the bathroom and shed a couple of tears because the things that I would want to tell my boss and tell him, I can't tell my boss, right? I can't say to my boss. So,
but
you could, but you might not have a job.
But remember, Ree, you said that your expression is normally through tears. And for the other party to understand what you're feeling, you cry. But in that situation that you just described, how is your boss supposed to interpret? Read your face?
And this is what I'm saying is that as I said earlier, why I cry a lot of times if I'm crying, it's not because of someone else or even wanting somebody else to interpret what I'm feeling. It's me getting out that anxiety, that pressure, that stress.
Yes.
Because when I do cry, I feel better.
Relief. Yes.
Yeah. I get it out. It's a way of getting it out.
So you don't necessarily
so when I
need
can express it vocally.
Understood. You
I
just
can
But
cry
then, like,
and I feel
after
better.
you cry, depending again on the context, after you cry, I feel like it's important to communicate what you're feeling because crying doesn't necessarily say how you feel. And we can't assume that the other person knows what those tears mean.
As every day goes by, how can we close our eyes until we open up our hearts?
Because I've been in situations where I was so angry, I had to cry. There was no other release because I will punch you in your face.
Burst.
And that can't happen. So I cried. I'm just saying.
Yes.
So
we
there
understand.
are times where you cry because you don't know what else to do.
Right.
And then after, it's still important to close the gap, close that bridge, or bridge that.
Most definitely.
And you have to communicate. Otherwise, it's like, okay, you cried. Okay.
It festers.
And now what?
Exactly.
And again, as you said earlier, Yolanda, it's contextual, because in the example that I just said, if my boss says something to me that I don't like, dependent on who my boss is, I cannot go override him or tell him, hey, this is such and such, right? I cannot go do that. But in the event that I'm in my relationship and I cry, I can then go back. We can revisit the topic at a later date when I'm no longer feeling that anger or that hurt or that or that anxiety within me. I can then express to him in words, well, this is what happened. And maybe then too, he would be more adept to listening to what I'm saying too. Sometimes, as the scripture that Sister Sharon quoted earlier on in Proverbs, that only a fool uttereth all his thoughts. Sometimes a man should keep it in, right? Sometimes when we keep in what we think too, and probably just release it in tears, sometimes when we revisit the thought, we can see where, we would have come off as being the aggressor, right? And then when we get that out, that anger, because sometimes anger fuels rage, and we say things that we don't necessarily need to say, and words we can't take back. But sometimes if we hold it in, cry about it a little bit, and then revisit it later on, it comes out better and easier.
Better results.
As long as it's revisited, you can't just let it sit, and not, because it will always come up again. It will always come back.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
True.
Yeah, I agree.
I will just quickly refer to Elder Grange, because he's here in spirit, and I'm just going to read his response to that question. Is that okay with everybody at this point, or anyone else want to have a word quickly?
Manipulation is everywhere. The social influence aimed at changing the behavior or belief of a person through emotional coercion, emotional manipulation, has always been prevalent in human interaction. It's in all of our relationships. Companies use it on us to make us buy certain products or feel a certain way, and even influencers use it to make sure they keep their followers. Pretty often, we're made to do things we don't want to do by people we hold in high esteem, without realizing that we're being manipulated by them. Nigerian writer Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie once said, "Show people as one thing and only one thing over and over again, and that's what they become." This stereotyping is a form of gaslighting. It's intentionally accusing someone of being a negative stereotype, whatever that may be. A few years ago, Facebook worked in partnership with the University of California to perform an experiment. In this experiment, Facebook purposefully altered the feeds of around 689,000 users, such that some only saw positive stories on their wall, while others only saw negative stories. After about a week of doing this, when these users posted their own updates, most of the time, they had been influenced by the emotions that flooded their wall. People who were fed more negative posts, in turn, put out more negative posts, while those who received a swell of positive posts used more positive language when making their own posts. This rather controversial experiment just shows how easily our emotions can be manipulated, even in very subtle ways.
Okay, so his response to this is, well, this is a loaded question. Because yes, manipulation could be there and could be a very effective tool for women. Now, if this pattern continues, then I wonder how gullible is the man. If a woman or a wife uses this tool to manipulate her husband, he's that gullible. What's interesting to me, he says, and what comes to mind is that while the children are seeing this, the daughter is seeing this as well. She will be using the same tool she sees her mother using that has become effective. Because now, once you use that tool and she notices that her mother gets everything that she has asked for or that she wants, why wouldn't the daughter use the same tool? The problem is the daughter may be missing out on a good man by trying to manipulate him.
Wow.
That's a different take.
Yeah, that is. Yeah. Well, that's interesting, I guess, because, and I think he's right, because children do live what they learn, right, in their home that they're raised in. So I think he has a good point there. And I mean, we don't gamble, we don't bet, but if I were to bet, I think we could bet pretty high that that daughter, if she does go on to form a relationship, that's what she's going to use, because that's what she knows.
Well,
until
because
that's what she knows.
She's learned what she's lived.
That's right.
Yolanda, are you a crier?
I
I put you on the spot. You're my daughter. The reason why I'm asking her that question is because I told you earlier that I used my tears one occasion to try to manipulate a situation. And here's what happened. I cried, and the person said to me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm crying." And the response was actually this, quote unquote, "But you don't cry." So I'm asking you, Yolanda, do you cry?
I kind of relate in that I will cry when I feel like I can't express myself in the moment. Like I will cry because I'm so frustrated and I don't know how to use my words, and I will cry. And this is only for somebody that can really hurt me and touch me. The everyday person could never get that close. But if you matter to me and and we're in a situation and I care so much and I don't know how to express myself, I will cry and walk away. And then I'll come back if it's a safe space and try to close that gap. But I'm not great with my words. I think I'm better writing it down, because I think my natural response is to probably fight you, but not physically.
Metaphorically.
Like with my words, I think I'm more ready to fight, but that's just because I love and I care so much.
Because of how passionate you are, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
Not a surface person, that's for sure. I'm going to ask Sister Elaine.
I totally relate.
Sister Elaine.
Are we moving on to question 3?
No, I was going to ask you if you cry.
I do, and I can relate to Yolanda. Like, if I can't find the words to express how I'm feeling, I'll cry.
Sort of into the same degree as or just...
It's not to manipulate the situation by any means. It's because I cannot find the words at the time.
Got you. And does it change the situation? Does it change the environment? Does it change the outcome possibly? Or just a relief for you?
It makes me feel better after the cry. And after that, I can actually revisit that situation again and try to make sense of it or to discuss it again.
Thank you for sharing that. Let's move on to question 3, Sister Elaine.
Question 3 says, do we think that any degree or demonstration of emotion between the sexes is a result of cultural ingrained, societal norms, genetics, repression, or expectation?
So I guess that's where I put nurture versus natural influences. Because I was thinking that, we're born with certain genes and certain personalities and whatever we are, but then we're born into a household and environment, and we learn from that and put it all together. we are the outcome. We are who we are. And we demonstrate that, so we're talking here again about emotion. So if male, female, we're going to demonstrate that based on, just how we're raised and who we are.
So you're talking about genetics because you're basically saying, I think you've combined.
Well, I'm saying it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I mean, I don't know to what degree more of is one or the other, but I definitely believe that it's a combination of both.
And you mentioned culture. I think you mentioned culture in the beginning.
Well, that's going to influence it for sure because, like Sister Ree was talking about the Caribbean men. So can we talk about men in cultural ways? Are the Caribbean men different from the European men who are then different from the, I don't know, Asian men? Or are they just blanket men?
I don't think we can blanket men.
Okay. Yeah,
I don't think we should.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with you, Sister Marilyn, where it is a little bit of all of it. The cultural aspect, the social aspect, the nature versus nurture aspect. It is how, and more so, and the reason, okay, let me give you an example. And I think most of us here probably know this story. There were twin boys. They grew up in a home where the father was an alcoholic. And one grew up to become an alcoholic and the other never drank a beer in their life.
Yes.
And when they were asked the question, why are you an alcoholic? The answer was the same. Because my father was an alcoholic. Why don't you drink? Because my father was an alcoholic. Right? So the nature of the individual and the social and the cultural or the nurturing aspect of the individual. Right. It factors deep, right? And it can make or break an individual. It can make you who you are. I've seen where you had a young boy, and because the young boy grew up in a home with 5 girls, a sister and just a mother, that young man was more effeminate.
Yes.
And I have seen the same thing happen in another household where the boy was around all girls, but this boy was manly because he had to become the man in the household. Right? So it is individualistic.
Yeah.
So
definitely, I would agree.
I'm going to jump right to how repression. I was just waiting to hear if anyone was going to even mention repression or expectation, and none of you did. So I just want to stay quiet and listen. But I think I'm going to read Elder Grange's because he mentions it. And thank you, all of you that responded to that. Before I read it, is there anyone else that would like to offer an expression to that question? Yolanda, I think you're the one that's not said anything to that.
I think I'll pause on this one just because I feel like I'm kind of saying the same thing in that.
And
it just depends.
That's okay too. That's okay as well. Well, okay. Here's what he says. Well, I believe we know in the Caribbean culture, and from what we've seen, maybe growing up, you can ask yourself this question. How many times did you hear your dad express emotions that needed to be expressed? How many times did you see him speak openly as he may have wanted to? And we're talking repression, right? I have seen that and grew up with that mindset in that culture we end up with the same pattern. We repress what we feel because that's just normal to us. But as we grow up and we learn, we realize that this is not normal. When we suppress our emotions, we cease to show up authentically. We cease to reveal our true inner self, and because of that, we lose ourselves, and our spouses will never really know how we feel and who we really are because we sleep and go to sleep with our emotions. We get up without emotions. We go to work without emotions, but we can't express our emotions because we had never felt safe expressing our emotions. I think that's so deep.
One day, when the glory comes, it'll be ours. It'll be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh.
Well, we have come to the end of another program on emotionalism between the sexes. We have to end the program right here. But please tune in again next Saturday to hear the rest of the conversation. You'll find that things started to heat up a little bit, and I might say quite passionately, emotionally, between the participants. I think you will enjoy what's to come. We can't wait. Tune in next Saturday, 6 o'clock, right here on HGG Radio, with me, your host, Sharon Laumen, with Expressions from the Heart. Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying these conversations, and we look forward to being with you. See you soon.
It'll be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure.
Even Jesus got his crown in front of a crowd. They march with the torch, we gon' run with it now. Never look back, we done gone hundreds of miles. From dark roads, heroes, to become a hero. Facing the League of Justice, his power was the people. Enemy is lethal, a king became regal. Saw the face of Jim Crow under a bald ego. The biggest weapon is to stay peaceful. We sing, our music is the cuts that we bleed through. Somewhere in a dream we had an epiphany. Now we right the wrongs in history. No one can win a war individually. It takes the wisdom of the elders, young people's energy. Welcome to the story we call victory. The coming of the Lord, my eyes have seen the glory.
One day when the glory comes, it will be ours. It'll be ours. Oh, one day when the glory comes, it will be ours. one day.
Reaching you at the highest mountain and the lowest valley. Higher Ground Gospel Radio. This is High Ground Gospel Radio. Thank you for listening to the program Expressions from the Heart with Sharon LAUMEN, right here on HGG Radio. Join us next week Saturday at 6 p.m. for another program. This is High Ground Gospel Radio. Stay tuned